So I thought we'll try and keep an eye on time, because yesterday we like I said we sort of thought we played around with what we were going to talk about today, and then we ended up meandering all over the place and talking for way too long. And I guess we want to make sure we've got some time for you to ask questions, probably to Kay rather than me, because she does the interesting bit. But so shall I do like a little intro to me, and then you do one to you, and then we'll just just talk to each other.
Just get the crack. Yeah, sounds good to me.
Cool. So yeah, my name's Jamie. The Kings of a Dead World is the second novel that I've had published. The first novel, The Zoo, came out about, shamefully, 5 years ago. It's taken me 5 years to get to a point now where Kay's holding the advanced reader copy of my novel up there. And actually, part of the time that it took so long is part of the story of the editing, to be honest. So I don't want to go into too much of that. But The Zoo came out. It was quite a lot of critical acclaim. I was made an Amazon Rising Star for that year. Yeah, and then I had a child, and my business took off, and it took me a long time to write the follow-up book. And then we've just spent the last, how long have we been editing it for? About 6 months.
The edit, by the time it got to me and I actually started work on it, the edit probably took 3 months, 5 rounds, not counting things like the proofreading and the production side of stuff. The story edit took about 3 months, which is not bad going.
Cool. It's hard to tell about time at the moment, isn't it? It's like the 7,000th of January 2019 at the moment. It's who knows? I've literally been sat in this shed, which was supposed to be my writing shed, but has actually become my escaping from a 4-year-old chasing me with Lego and working all day shed. But yeah, I think I'm gonna before I just want to sort of get a caveat at the start of this, that I absolutely love the editing process. To me it's the, if not the best bit of the writing process, it's the second best bit. And I thought that's why when we asked for a topic to talk about, I picked editing, because I just think it's, to me, I love the ideation part. To me, is a really creative part. The editing is as creative in my opinion as the actual coming up with the ideas in the first place. And in the middle of that, you've got the writing of a novel, which is in many ways like just a big old slog. So I was talking to somebody about this the other day and saying that the process of editing is like, it's like when you go to shoot a film, you have the idea for the film, and then you go out and you shoot reams and reams of footage, and it only becomes good when you edit it together. And I think the same thing about writing. I'm going to say nice things about Kay now, but the version of King's Dead World that's coming out is 10 times better than it could have been if Kay hadn't been involved in the process. Probably more than that, actually. There you go. Over to you.
Well, I'm Kay Farrell. I'm the editor of Kings of a Dead World. I work at Sandstone Press. We're a small independent publishing house based in the north of Scotland. We publish about 30 books a year, fiction and non-fiction. Our list is pretty eclectic. We just sort of look for books which are innovative and exciting and modern in some way. And yeah, when I first read Kings, I thought, this is great. It's too long, but it's great. Which is hilarious to me, because I think you said the other day that your first draft was 200,000 words long.
Yeah, it was, and it's absolutely mental. And I think that's what I was alluding to when I was saying that it took a long time. The editing process took long, because it was the classic difficult second novel thing where you just think you got to be clever. Second one's got to be clever, and you just chuck everything at it, and it ended up being 200,000. It's probably more than that, actually. I don't. I'll find the original draft at some point and send it to you so you can freak out. But I sent it to my agent, and she was just like, she came back to me really quickly, and I thought she's either going to tell me it's a genius or it's terrible, and she came back really quickly and it's really good, but you've got to cut it in half. And so I immediately had to go away and cut 100,000 words out of it.
Yeah, you didn't know, because it was 145,000 when I got it. I checked.
Yeah. So I did cut 100,000 words out of it, because it was 240,000 words.
See, now the truth comes out. Yeah, that's a lot. That is, and most commercial kind of fiction books are about 90,000 words, and most literary novels are about 120,000 words. There are a few that are a lot longer than that, but it becomes more difficult to publish the longer it is, for one thing. And for another thing, not many stories need to be that long. And Jamie, I think you'll probably agree with this. A lot of editing, in fact, 90% of editing is just removing what's not necessary.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the things that you did as we're going through the process was, because I'd spent all that time writing all of those words, and I'd built up this really complex world which I completely understood because I'd done the graft, and put it and written all of it. I was really reluctant to get rid of bits, and you were just like, well, what is that in there for? Why are you doing that? I was like, because I like it. It's like, that's not really good enough reason. And so, yeah, it's there's so much value to just streamlined it to get it into such a better place than it was. I wonder if it's worth if we sort of talk through the factual process, that how we did it, basically what we did in order to get from when it turned up at 145,000 words to which was still quite flabby, and to something now which is, I actually don't know how many words it is now, but it's, in my opinion, it's the best possible version it could be of the story because of what you've done to it.
I mean, that's sweet and all, but a lot of what I did, I find this, a lot of writers tell me this. I say to them, you should really do this. You need to, this bit doesn't work. This bit's too long. This bit's whatever it is. And the reaction is almost always, yeah, I kind of knew that. And I think it is sort of a big part of the editor's job is to be the reader, to be the first person who reads it in really small detail. Your editor's probably going to pay more attention to your text than anyone else, sorry. But they're the people who are really, really focused on it and trying to bring polish to every bit. And I think a lot of, it's like you just said there, Jamie, you knew that some of the bits weren't quite working, but you liked them and you wanted them in.
Yeah.
I think I looked up that quote I was saying to you. It's Samuel Johnson. He said,
okay,
read through your prose, and if any passage strikes you as particularly fine, cross it out.
That's so good.
It's the kill your darlings principle.
It is. Yeah. So you've got one of the, I think one of the reasons that we work well together is because of the process that you follow, because I'm quite a process driven person, and the way you edit is different to other editors I've worked with. Different to other editors I've worked with, in that you're very process driven. There's a definite, we went through a really, even the way you name the files is really process driven. So yeah, I'm guessing that's probably quite interesting.
That's sweet of you to say. People I work with call it pathological sometimes. Either or both is, I don't know. People who are watching, if you would like to hear about my editing process, can you just sort of nod or something, or if you want us to move on, or okay, great. I don't want to bore you guys. So
not boring. It's really interesting, but then I'm a geek, so.
Me too. I mean, I made my whole life about books and I love it. So the first thing I do obviously once the text has been acquired and it's been assigned to me, I print it out, I read the whole thing, and I'll have my notebook and my trusty red pen. That is not a myth. All editors have red pens and we love them.
Is that all editors? Or
I'm fairly sure it's all editors. There are a lot of people who do edit electronically, but for me, you've got to start on paper. And some people do the other way around and they read the final draft on paper. But one way or another, it does make a difference. I don't know why, but it does. So I've got my notebook and I've got my red pen. Red pen is for things like, this paragraph doesn't work. This bit's really good. This bit, you're just making your notes as you go on the manuscript. And the notebook is for bigger things. So it'd be like, I just read, I don't know. I'll use an example from a different book. You got a dog in chapter 6. Haven't heard about the dog in 8 chapters. Where's the dog? Things like that. Inconsistencies that you notice, or anything that comes to mind. And it's usually the first edit is almost always where you do the big structural changes. The structural changes are needed. And I think in your case, there wasn't a lot of structural work. There was some.
I can't remember. There was because it was so complicated, structurally complicated to start with. I think I'd got rid of most of the complexity before it came. No, you did. You moved. It was chronological. You've moved some of the order around. So you made it character rather than time.
That's right. That's right. The sections were organized by the characters. Yeah, that's right. I had forgotten. I really should have.
That was the biggest structural thing we did, was just to, it used to go chronologically in time, but then you swapped the order around. So actually, if you worked out the timeline, it jumps backwards and forwards loads, but it feels much more chronological in terms of character development.
Yeah. It was relatively minor as structural development goes. I mean, I've had books where somebody's had to take out a whole minor character or a whole plot arc or something. And you did say that you'd done some of that before I saw it. Fair enough.
Leslie made me do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first edit is always the biggest and the deepest, and where you sort of address, these are the story things that need to be changed. If this, if the characters aren't working, if there's something somewhere, that's where you try and spot it, and you sort of say, this is what I think we should be doing. And then it goes back to the author, and if they're Jamie, then they're really good sports about it and they get on with it. Some writers get upset sometimes, which is unfortunate. Some writers have a very specific idea of how they want the book to be, and and that's fair enough. Everyone has their vision. If something like that happens and somebody says, but this bit is crucial for this, what I try to do then is say, all right, well, let's have a chat about it. What is it this section that I'm saying isn't working? What is it you're trying to do with it? And a lot of times there's a solution which allows the retention of it, but it's sort of like, okay, well, if it was supposed to do this, then you need a little bit more about this character beforehand. Or if it's supposed to do that, then you need to, think about maybe putting it later in the narrative. So it's almost always, it's a collaboration first and foremost. And you want to make sure that everyone's happy and you're not, it's not my book.
It is a collaboration, and it's one that I really value. Just to have somebody who firstly looks at your book in that much detail, because like you said, no one else does. Reviewers won't, and even readers will look at it in a slightly less analytical way. They'll sort of experience it rather than drill down into it. So for me, it's a massive. It really is a privilege to how often do you get to sit and discuss in minute detail with somebody about something that you've written and delve into it, and the person who's doing it with you is doing it with the aim to make what you're putting out into the world better, which is amazing. But the thing that I just can't get my head around as a writer is how you look at something that's a collective whole. Like you've got this thing which is too many words in my case, and then you go, right, well, the structure's not right because of this. That character's not developed enough. It's too long. There's something on. How do you firstly look at it as a collective? This is a whole piece trying to do something, but then drill down into it and go, right, well, I need to do that, and that in order to fix it. That's a really big question, isn't it?
I don't know how to answer that now.
I just see your face, you're like, I've got no idea how I do that.
I think if you are somebody who reads a lot all the time and you've read thousands of books in your life, you know what makes a good book, what makes an enjoyable book, what makes a literary book. And we all know story, I think that's a fundamental kind of human thing. The ability to articulate why that story isn't quite working is, I guess, something you just develop. I've always overanalyzed. So this is just sort of turning that particular aspect of my personality into a marketable skill instead of just something that drives me insane on the weekends. I'm being a little bit flippant because I don't know. I can't break that down for you, which probably isn't very helpful.
No, it's just really interesting. It's just an interesting thing to me. Like that, because it comes back as so. Like because you also mentioned your process. We've kind of gone off on a tangent, haven't we? But
every time
the way you've got two copies of the document, and you move between the two, and you update the one and move to the other, and then you've got the when it came every time it came back to me, it had the separate document, which was big picture stuff we need to think about, stuff we need to think about in the text here.
Yeah. I didn't get that far, did I? So
no,
you have your editorial notes, which is basically the distilled version of what I've written in my notebook. And you have a marked up manuscript, which is my red penning, done with track changes. And all of that goes back first round. And then you have that chat between the two of us. It's like, okay, this is the big picture stuff you've highlighted, or I've highlighted, you know, what do you see? What do you want to do about it? How do you want to tackle it? And then leave the author to their devices for a few weeks. And when it comes back, you do it again. You usually, as you get further into the editing process, there'll be fewer things every time. But what does happen is that when you've moved, like you've addressed the big issues. So the structure now works. But that has revealed that something else, you know, I didn't notice this before because this caught my attention. But now I've spotted that this character, you know, pops up in places that don't make sense, something. And you can refine it every time. And what you catch will be smaller every time, as it were. It won't be like big story problems. It'll be like little scenes and things like that, which are bigger than the line edits, but not massive rewrites needed.
Yeah. So I think from my experience, when we did the first one, which was changed the order round, which then made it into when I got that back, and because that the reason it took so long to write and the reason it got so bloated is because I set the structure before I started writing it, and then I built the story into the structure, which is probably the wrong way around to do things, but I did that. But as soon as you took that out and moved things around, it was like I could see the story more clearly, if that makes sense. And then once we'd done that, then you picked up on a few things about motivations for some of the characters, and that was almost like you had to line the story up correctly first, and then that brings out, well, that he wouldn't act like that in that situation, because you actually then we had we could see the whole, and you could see how they were interacting in the whole, if that makes. But it's like the process is set up to do that. So I wanted to know how you got to that process, if that makes sense.
Practice. It works for me. The first few times I did big edits, I think it was probably much more sort of scattershot and almost a holistic approach. And there is some benefit to that, and it certainly works really well for some people. And it's not as though your approach also has to vary with the book and the type of text you're working on. Some books are very structurally complex, and some of them are character driven, and some of them are plot driven. So, you know, in this sense, the structure was crucial. I didn't realize that you'd written it that way, but that makes sense because the structure was so important to how the story flowed. So in your case, yes, we needed to get the story right before we could start tinkering with the other elements. In some other cases, it's there was a thriller, and it ended. The first draft ended with the woman who had been doing all the scheming, love good scheming woman, being murdered by a minor character who'd appeared twice before. And I was just, I basically threw it down in disgust. And I was sort of saying to the author, this is all brilliant except this. This is really disappointing. And didn't tell her how to fix it. I just sort of said, you know, what are you going to do? This because this character is basically nothing, and then it turns out they're the murderer, and it's just really disappointing. I tried to put it more softly than that, but you know, this was a very well published author, so you know. Don't
say who it is. We're recording.
I'm not going to. I'm absolutely not going to. But just what I was meaning is that, you know, we'd worked together before we had that rapport. So it wasn't like I was coming into meeting this person for the first time and saying, you're right, it's terrible. The book was terrific, absolutely terrific, but that didn't work. And rather than build the character into more scenes, took the character out and made somebody else the murderer. And it worked brilliantly. And apparently this has never been the plan in the first place, but this person just fit perfectly. And it was that kind of great, oh, so he did it instead. Oh, that's so much better. So the original character is still in the two passing scenes that they were in, and then you never hear about them again.
That's really cool.
was a mystery, the mystery had to be the thing that was right first.
So there's a couple of things that
happen. To make in a very roundabout, clumsy kind of way.
There's a couple of bits in Kings of the Dead World that you did that too, actually, where trying to think of an example. But I don't want to give too much away. But but wondering where a body is at some point, like where, and just some stuff that kind of that you can't, because you're so intent on telling a story that you just sort of leave stuff behind like that. Like,
where's the dog?
Where's the dog? Where is the dog? But in the case of the example you're giving of somebody almost random being pivotal to the whole plot in the end, it's probably often you, like, as a writer, you sort of plan it as a whole, don't you? It's like, well, that's going to happen. This is going to be the end of Act 2, and the big shock's going to be this, and a lot of the benefit for me of the editing process is somebody just to, like, who understands the structure of story, to go that, well, I kind of get what you're trying to do, but that just doesn't work. So that it doesn't get to a reader and they go, what?
There's the ritual scene, which I know you love, really, and I love now. But
because it's not in there anymore.
Well, that's enough of it is that it works, I think. But like, there's this scene, and it comes about maybe 2/3 of the way through the book. And I really enjoyed the scene as written, but I think my comment to you was something along the lines of, I don't understand who these people are or why this is happening.
I think it was that subtle, yes. But but like, it's what you're saying earlier about most writers sort of know that stuff. Like, I kind of knew that, and as soon as you said it, I was like, yeah, she's right. It's like yeah. I've found out that is absolutely the case, but I kind of liked it, so I kept it, and then there is no. But without going through that process, that would have gone out into the world, and a reader would have gone, what? What is that happening for? And then that sort of highlights to me the one of the values of going through the.
And your enthusiasm for the process was also terrific. Was just great. Just sort of, your keenness to get in and be like, all right, let's do this. Let's make it better. Let's work like that. It's so it was.
I just think
really,
it's.
Yeah. No, you go.
Well, does that not? I find it strange that doesn't happen all the time. To be honest, do you have? I guess you have to have different relationships with different writers and get to stuff in different ways.
Yeah. Well, with you, I was very direct because. We had that chat, and I was like, well, I'm just going to be able to say it, and he's just going to be able to hear it. But yeah, it's a working relationship like any other. So, my process never changes. I am very kind of, I will read it through once, and I will read it through twice, and I will send you files named this way, and I will stop sending editorial notes when they stop being necessary, kind of thing. But in terms of how the editorial notes go about raising points or saying things, that can vary. And as I said, some writers have a very specific view of how they want their book to be. And it's my job to respect that while also making it's the best version of that is what we're trying to do. But some people can be quite, you need the sort of soft, gentle persuasion because they've fallen in love with their own writing. And to some extent, obviously, we have too, or we wouldn't be wanting to publish it. But because of who we are and what we do, we've always got that analytical side. The number of times I've read a manuscript that's been in our submissions and said, it's magnificent. We absolutely have to publish it. The whole of the last third has to go, but it's brilliant. It's amazing. I'm not actually joking. That's a real thing that happened. We got a book that basically started being a different genre for the whole of part 3. And I spoke to the author and said, how do you feel about junking part 3? And there was this sort of silence, and he's like, but why? And in the end, he got an epilogue, which was about half half of one chapter. But bless his heart, that was
almost like so how do you feel about losing the ritual scene?
Yeah.
But you weren't that subtle.
No, subtle's not my natural state, but I can be subtle when subtle is required.
So I guess Yeah, in terms of getting the best out of the editing process, like, well, if you were going to give a suggestion to somebody who's going, like, who is either about to go into the editing process or is on the journey to get into that point, what tips would you have from an editor's point of view of how you go into that process? Because it is a process, and it's quite a long process, and it's quite involved.
Yeah, it is. You're going back into the guts of the story over and over and over again until you and your editor agree that this is it. This is the peak. We have reached our final form. So yeah, I think the first thing I would say is that it's definitely worth just having a chat about the book. If you're planning on selling, if you're in the stage process of selling your book, and you've not really worked with this company before, you don't know anyone there, anything like that, it's worth at that stage before you sign the contract saying, can I talk to my editor and talk about your book and talk about your vision for your book and hear what that person has to say about it? Where's the enthusiasm for what you've done? Do they love it? Are they going to, do you have a similar view of how you're going to sell all of that? If you can, do it at a very early stage. If you've started the edit, then it's still worth doing that. It's like, I think we'd had that chat for the first time, I think, after I'd done the first edit, which is still a good time to sort of do it.
Remember, it's all mixed up. Time's all mixed up, isn't it?
Yeah, nowadays? No, it's fair.
Who knows?
But after the first edit is also good. And that's another common time to have that conversation. When someone's got all of your notes and sort of saying, you're telling me this bit doesn't work. Can you say, but well, why? I'll sort of say, yeah, okay, so this is my opinion. What do you think? And sometimes it's like, well, I really like that bit because of this. It's like, okay, but why is it important to the reader? That's the question, and that's the point of the editing process. Writing, I think, can be very, very personal. But if you want to get people reading your book, you have to constantly be thinking about the person reading the book. They don't know the things you know. They haven't done the research you've done. If it's not in there, then they don't know it. Conversely, you could have done a lot of research and have these massive passages they don't care about. This is the history of this house, and they don't care. They just want to know if these two people get married, whatever. So you always have to be thinking about who's going to be reading your book and what are they looking for in a book. And that's the guiding principle of the editing process, first and foremost.
So would you say then that the primary purpose of an editor is being? I don't want to do a leading question here, but I'm clearly going to do a leading question.
Right, all right, hit me with it.
So you, on one side, you are part of a publishing's a business, and essentially. You as a publisher, you would only publish something if you think you can make your money back on it, or there or thereabouts. But also you want to create something that is art.
Yes.
Yeah, and you want it to find a readership. So you've got as an editor, you're sitting somewhere on like the middle of the seesaw between business acumen and sort of like delivering something artistic from a reader's point of view. That's like quite a difficult line to walk, I would suspect.
If that one sounds too grandiose, I think of myself as the halfway point between the writer and the reader. And then once my job's done, I get out of the way. That's sort of how I feel about it. But yeah, you're absolutely spot on, Jamie, when you're saying about how it's a business and you've got to. We've had books come in that are beautiful and well written, and we just sort of think we can't sell this. This is not, it's not one that fits with what we do or what we're known for. It's not one we have expertise in, or just very simply, it's not going to connect with the readers that we know how to talk to, and that sucks. And that usually goes through several rounds of disappointing discussion, but it happens. Yeah. If at all possible with that, I'll usually sort of suggest you might try these guys, and I have that's very much the exception, but I have from time to time called one of my editor friends and been like, we can't do this. You might like this, because they've got a very different list from us. And that's happened to us too. It's like, one of my friends from my Napier days, which is where I did my publishing masters, phoned up and said, met these girls and they got this great idea for a book, but we publish children's books. Do you want to talk to them? And I was like, well, tell me more. And 2 years later, that book was Gears for Queers, which was yeah. Cool. So yeah, and that was great fun working on that. I forgot what you asked me in the first place.
So have I.
The business side.
Yes.
Yeah, it's difficult because writing is so personal, because publishing is a business, and because your first duty to your authors is to stay in business and be able to pay them royalties, really. I mean, if you want to get right down to the guts of it, which probably sounds very, very cold, but it's a fact. If you go out of business, then your authors can't make money anymore.
Yeah.
So that's kind of our first and foremost responsibility, and we take that very seriously. We want to publish books and make sure that they find readers who are going to love them and spread the word about them. And the editing process is a big part of that. You're never going to try, if you're sensible, you're never going to acquire a book and then try to make it into something completely different. That's not the point at all. You want to refine it.
Has that never happened? Have you ever seen a book and buried in the middle of it is one bit that you go, oh my God, that would make an amazing story?
Oh, sure, that has happened. But we don't acquire the book and say, now rewrite it. We say, that's the bit that's interesting. If you rewrite it and come back to us, we might publish that. And then it's up to the writer if that's the book that they want to write or not. Because in a lot of cases, it's not. In a lot of cases, the bit that we think is interesting is not the bit that the writer is interested in writing about, which is a shame. But that's fair enough, right? It's very personal. But conversely, we have had that where a book sort of came back 2 years later, and it had been completely rewritten. It was in one of the non-fictions, and it started out being an extension of this person's PhD project. And it came back and it was this most beautiful narrative. Fabulous. So, and there are others that I do hope come back someday.
Have you got like a little stash of them buried away in your head somewhere? You go, there was that one that I saw once that was amazing, but I just desperately wanted them to do that.
There are 2 books that we offered for and were outbid by other companies, and I'm still angry and salty about it.
Prodding a sore point right there. While you've been saying that, something's occurred to me. Like, what from a personal editor's satisfaction point of view? At what point?
Okay, but this is the last question, and then we need to take Q&A because it's like 7 already.
Have we done it? We've done it again, haven't we?
Yeah.
Sorry, boss. From a sense of personal satisfaction, what state do you want a book to arrive you in? Do you want is it better when you've got like a raw uncut diamond that you can just go, I'm going to properly get my teeth into this, or is it better when you get something that's nearly there and you just think needs honing, or is it better when you just get something and you go, do you know what, that's going to take me 10 minutes and it'll be really good?
I don't really think that way.
Do you not?
No, sure, from a workload point of view, if I get something that's in and I'm just sort of like, oh, this is basically just going to need a quick once over and a few scenes trimmed, then that's like, great, that's a week and we're done. But from a job satisfaction point of view, it's, it doesn't matter to me how long it takes as long as the book is its best version when I'm done, really. Okay,
got one more question then. Sorry, one more question. How do you know when to stop? Like, I don't know if you remember, there was this painter his name was Alwyn Crawshaw, I think, and he was like a TV painter, and he used to do like beautiful watercolors, and he always used to stand and go, I don't know when to stop, Alwyn, and then he'd sort of like walk away from it. But like, how do you know when it's done? Like, I think like we got to the point you were like, that's it, don't touch it anymore. How do you know that?
I think I actually did say that to you, didn't I? It's like, when you get it back from the proofreading, don't make any changes that aren't error corrections.
Yeah, that's because I think I had that on the last one.
all authors do that, and it's the knowing when to stop thing. How
I
do I
think you
know
actually
when
told
to
me off
stop?
because I actually made some grammatical changes that you were like,
No,
no,
that's right.
that's
right.
actually not correct.
I remember now.
Hmm.
Yeah. How do I know when to stop? When I believe that the story is in its best version. When I and the author are happy that the characters are coming through the way that they should, and the story is being told well, and every single sentence has been looked at several times, and it's a sentence. Yeah, she says, looking at the man who likes comma splicing.
I do. I love a comma splice. There's nothing wrong with a comma splice.
All authors have their little quirk that they do in every sentence, and that's one of the things as an editor that you sort of see and you think.
I'm aware of it though, so that's a deliberate artistic choice rather than a quirk. My name
took out as many of them as he would let me.
Yeah, it would really upset. Is it Edward Strunk that does the rules of? There's like a really famous American grammar book that I think it's Edward Strunk, something like that.
You can have writing quirks and it's fine, but if you're doing it all the time, it's the issue of the rhythm and the music. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I
thought I got away with all the kind of splices, but clearly not. Yeah.
But no, it was reading really well. There were just a few little things like that. You need to scale that kind of thing back a little bit so that it works as an effect and it doesn't just look like this is the only way you know how to write. And everybody has something like that. Every author has their one thing that they do over and over again, like their favorite words, or they don't like to refer to their characters by names and their pronouns everywhere. There's always something that an author does consistently that is the one thing that the most of the line editing is taken up with. That's not a structural thing.
We haven't even touched on line editing, have we? After we've gone through all of that, then there's all the copy editing.
I think that's basically it for line editing. It's like all authors have their favorite sentence structures or their favorite words that they use, and it's there. For the most part, it's just, as I say, about making that work as an effect rather than it seeming like. The one thing that I am absolutely ruthless on is if you're starting your sentences with conjunctions, they will all come out.
Yes, I will concur you do that. One of the things that actually I remember from working with Moira, and this is about the editors. One of the things she told me, which I just use in my day-to-day job all the time, is that you very rarely need to use the word that. You can take that out in most cases, and the sentence is either no different or better. And I use that all the time when I'm doing in work, when I'm trying to submit documents, and it's got to be 500 words, and you're like, oh, I'm on 600. Go through, and you'll lose 20 straight away just by deleting that.
You don't overwrite. There wasn't a lot of we need to lose some adjectives and some adverbs, so
that's good to know. That's one of the things that gets drummed into you and things like Litopia and forums is about adjectives and overwriting and show detail and all that.
Terrific, absolutely terrific. It's the best kind of so it's really nice to be speaking to you guys, because I think that writing groups are the best training ground for somebody, because you have lots of you have feedback all the time, and you learn how to take criticism, and you learn how to work on your text, and all of that is really positive if you want to be a published writer. Just absolutely crucial.
It also gets you into the mindset when you come to the editing process and embracing it as something that's a good thing. I think I spent a long time on the Litopia forum, and what I see is people come in and I think I had this beaten out of me by ruthless crits on writing forums of just being very, very precious about something and getting you back up if people give feedback. And one thing that Peter Cox does really well on Utopia is say all feedback is you take it you say thank you. Since I sort of got that into my head, I just realised that any process of honing the book, it makes it better. And when you get to working with a professional editor, like you should just listen to everything they say, because they're the only thing that the professional editor does is try to make the book the best it can be. I think I said at the start that I love editing, and I'm going to go back to that. I just think it is it's almost the best part of our writing. But not quite the first. It's good too. And we've talked longer than we said we would, Tom and Sophie.
There's still like 10, 15 minutes maybe for
anybody
questions?
wants questions, or but ask Kay, because she's much more useful in this than I.
Gee, thanks.
Yeah, if
anyone's got a question, very welcome.
Yeah, sorry. If anyone's got any questions, if you'd like to put your hand up, I'll literally just go in order of any hands that I see first, if you're feeling brave. Otherwise, you can put them in the chat as well. Oh, okay. Hi, Marina. I'll ask you to unmute.
Hiya, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep, hello.
Okay. Hiya. My question's for you, Jamie. I'm just wondering...
Can I ask Kay?
Nah, throw you under the bus, boy.
I'm just wondering, so more with your first novel. So when
Yeah.
you were approaching agents, did you go through the self-editing process quite a lot? Because surely you want to get your book to a point where it's as good as you think it can be before you're approaching agents. So then how did it feel to then have to go through the process again?
So, the reason I knew that I was with the right publisher actually was Moira, who was my editor on the first book. She when Leslie, my agent, well, they were talking about it, Moira went, yeah, it's really good, but you need to change the ending to this. And as soon as she said it, I was like, oh yeah, of course I do. Like that's and all the way through the process up to that point, the conversation about with my agent, she was saying there's something wrong with the ending, and Moira just nailed. She it's that, and we were both like, yeah, that's so obvious. Like it's there. You said it. It's so obvious. But I think I wrote an article for the Writers and Artists Yearbook about getting published the first time, and like The Zoo was my fourth book, I think, and there was it took me two novels to get to, so probably two novels to work out how to write a novel in terms of actually sitting there and going from start to finish and writing it. And they were both terrible. And then the third one was sort of like nearly good enough. And I could probably revisit, actually I could probably edit it into something half decent. But it still wasn't quite right. And then The Zoo was much closer to being finished. And then again, at that point I was just really I was just mega excited to be published as well. So to be able to everything at that point was like, oh my gosh, I've got a publisher. Oh my gosh, I've got an agent. I've got a publisher. I've got an editor. Oh, I've got my first edits back. And actually, I'm still like this now. I'm mega excited about seeing the art copy through, so it doesn't go away. I still got mine. Hopefully tomorrow. But yeah, I think it's almost a case of accepting that it's never finished until that conversation we just had about it both of you thinking it's finished.
Yeah.
The version that Kay got was probably the fourth draft, maybe. So in various different ways. So we get, so it probably in total had about eight drafts of it to get to this point. Have I asked the question? Have I just meandered around? I think I hopefully answered it.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions at all? Oh, yep, I'll go to Anne and then Katie. Again, I'll go in order of hands being risen.
Oh, I just beat you, Katie. Sorry about that. Kay, you touched on this, but I was thinking of asking it myself anyway, because it's something that I'm very guilty of. Is you said how it annoys you when the author changes something else at the end of the editing process, but I've done that with each of my books, and it's kind of I'm kind of wondering how often that happens and what that feels like from your side, because but to justify it, it's your perception of the book has changed after somebody has gone into the edits, and you know that the book is a different thing, and you can see things that you didn't see before.
I don't know if you find the same, Anne, but when you get the copy, the version, the print pass comes to you, the rather than the Word document, but the document of what it's going to be printed as, that changes your perception as well. Sorry, I doubt your question.
Yeah, it really depends what comes. It really does. Because once, I mean, if it's happening at the stage where the text is already laid out, then if there are major changes, that has a not insignificant impact on the detail of the work. So from that point of view, it can be a little frustrating. But more than that, you know, if it's something that's going to make the whole book better, you're not going to argue as the editor. You're going to be like, yeah, why didn't we do that 2 months ago? But that's not usually what you get at the late stage. What you get is, I just want to change this sentence around a little bit, and I just want to change this adjective. And it's the difference between editing and improving and fiddling. And that's not to say that it's never better, but it's more that it's more that I think that kind of my painting is never finished feeling. And sometimes I think that it's, I mean, you know, you might know this better than me. But sometimes it feels from an author that it's not actually coming from a place of let's keep working on the book and improving it. It's coming from I'm not ready to let this go and let it go into the world kind of a place. And again, if it's something that genuinely is going to improve the book, as the editor, that's what you want. You want the best version of the book. That's not usually what you get. And that's why it's annoying. An author wanting to make their book better is never annoying. That's what you want. But an author who has trouble letting go, that can be quite tricky. And then there, you know, and depending on who the author is, sometimes there has to be a little bit of hand holding and you know, hugging. And sometimes there has to be a little bit of, okay, you're going to give it to me now.
I think that's what we were, wasn't it?
Yes, it was like, you'll stop now. Thank you. But, you know, again, that's a personality thing. So yeah, that's where the annoyance comes from. Is when it's no longer in the book's best interest to keep changing things.
So does that almost makes me think that and I think this is probably the case, is that the editor is the champion of the book in lots of not only in getting the best out of it from the author's point of view, but in terms of getting it out into the world.
Oh yeah. Maybe people who haven't been through the publishing process won't know this, but like, so I, as the editor, I go to book fairs and I talk about books to people in other countries who might want to translate it into different languages. And I go along to bookseller fairs sometimes, not always. Sometimes it's the marketing department, but sometimes it's me. And I'm like, this book is brilliant and all your readers are going to love it. And this is why. And I'll write a letter sometimes to go to the bookseller saying, this is the magnificent thing that you have in your hands and you should love it. And if you don't, I'm going to come down there, you know, and in all those senses, yeah. And sometimes you are the champion for the book from day one in the publishing house. You know, it comes to you, it comes to us in submissions, and I'll be the one who sort of says, that sounds good, I'll read it. And then you have to go back to the acquisitions panel and say, okay, it's a little bit out there, but I think we should do it because it's great for all of these reasons. And this is why I think that we should do it. And this is why I think it's right for us. And this is how I think we should, you know. So you can be the champion for the book in the house to get it published in the first place. Sometimes you have to convince the other members of the acquisitions panel, and that's a long conversation. And then you work on it, you know, closely with the author, closely with the text. You're in the guts of the story, which is my favorite place to be. And yeah, and then you love it, and then you let it go. And that's a lot easier for the editor than it is for the writer, but it's more important for the writer to be able to do that. But not too soon, because we need you to, like, you know, go and talk about it and tell everyone else how great it is, like 6 months after you finish the edit.
And that's also the strange thing as well, isn't it? Is that the whole process is so like, I'm halfway through my next novel, and we're just finished the editing of, well, we're past that actually. We're into the printing process of the last one. So it's quite a skill from a juggling your brain point of view, of trying to keep all of the whys that you had for that book going while you've had to keep going on, because publishing's a long process, isn't it? It's like 18 months, 12 months, 18 months.
I think with you from acquisition to publication, it was 18 months, which is partly because, you know, we have done it faster than that, but it can be a bit of a scramble. I mean, even just from us sending it going. Oh,
there's a funny pandemic thing going on as well.
Well, yes. I mean, you know, that minor point.
Yeah, minor life-changing, world-dominating event.
Yeah. But I mean, you're absolutely right, Jamie. And if you want to be a professional writer, you have to be able to do that. You have to have your head in what you're currently working on and what you're currently trying to sell. Because if this book doesn't sell, there's less of a chance anyone's going to publish the other one, unfortunately. And I'm so sorry, Katie. I see that you're having to leave and we didn't get to your question.
Oh, sorry, Katie.
We failed. In that case, if Katie said to go, I'm going to be a terrible host and I'm going to ask a question, even though I should be asking if anyone else has got any, but I'm currently in the process of editing my first novel as well. So I would like to know some things. I'm here for selfish reasons too. Because everything that I've written previously has been a collection. And the last collection that I did that was with an indie publisher is the first time I've worked with an editor, but that was like poetry in shorts, not feature length, for lack of a better expression. So from both of you, really, what are your like very top 3 best pieces of editing advice, like your top 3 tips, essentially, for how do you get that perfect? I know, I'm putting you on the spot.
Jamie, you go first because your stuff would happen first.
I just unmuted myself, so you go first. All right, okay. I think I've said it loads, but I'm just going to say it again because I think it's the most important thing about editing is go into it thinking that it's a privilege and it's going to make your book better. If you go into it with that mindset, it will make your book better. The other thing I think is not to be precious about things. Like we keep coming back to the spiritual scene, which I still think in as a standalone piece. See how precious I am with it, but as a standalone piece, it's one of the best passages that I've written for a long time, but to let it go was the right thing to do for the overall novel, and so just to not be precious about stuff. And the other thing I think would be to throw yourself into it. And to really work hard at it. Like when Kay came back to me with a set of amends, I would always read it, sort of think about it really quite deeply, and then just go, right, I'm going to lock myself in a room and I'm going to throw myself at it and do it, and go back, do it quite. I don't want to say quickly because it wasn't a flippant thing, but to just go for it, wholeheartedly. There you go. There's 3. Over to you, Kay.
No, that's cool. Thank you.
Were you meaning about like editing your own work or about working with an editor?
Well, a bit of both, to be honest with you. If your top 3 tips kind of overlap into both areas, I'm happy.
It's just because processes are a little bit different. This one I think applies no matter what stage you're at, which is be the reader as much as you can. So when you, if you can, finish your book, stick it in a drawer for a couple of months, and then go back to it fresh, and you'll see things that you didn't see before. And think about, if this book is aimed at, I don't know, like who's going to read this? And if your answer is, it's okay for anybody about, between the ages of 18 and 50, then you don't know the answer to that question. Who is the reader of this book? What in this book connects with that person? Now, obviously, obviously you don't want to give yourself a wide readership, but it also has to be kind of personal in that sense. And you need to think about, the person who's reading my book, do they know all the things I know? Do they have all this life experiences that I do? They don't. Of course they don't. So it's about making sure that somebody who doesn't have the same perspective can come at your story without needing your point of view, because your point of view is in the text. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've actually been pulled up on that before about using certain expressions in terms of phrases that I think everyone would know, And then in actual fact, I've been told nobody like that either needs a footnote or you need to get rid of it because, for example, an editor didn't know what a puggy was to mean. You see, no there idea. You go, just like that. A puggy where I grew up was like the slot machine, like the gambling machine that was in the chip shop where kids at my school used to go and play, even though they weren't 18. Tells you what kind of town I grew up in.
Every time so, yeah, in the UK.
Yeah, but just little, I guess, colloquialisms, turn of phrases,
See,
stuff
you
like
can
that.
use colloquialisms as long as the explanation is clear in context. Stephen May, who I work with, is really good at that. He's written like lots of novels set in Northern English cities. And there have been a couple of times where I've been like, I don't know what that means. So I've just tweaked the sentence a little bit and then it becomes clear. But that's exactly the thing. It's like you get to use what gives it the flavor of your part of the world, but you're making allowances for the people who don't know what that is.
I guess as well. Yeah, if you're Irving Welsh, for example, and
if you're Irving Welsh, then yeah, you can do whatever you want, really. I don't know
can
why
you actually see
it
my
works.
Bookshelf?
It's James Kelman as well.
All over here is Irving Welsh.
Well, yeah, the other way you can go is make it so thick and impenetrable and yet somehow poetic that everybody can understand it without needing to understand the words at all. And if you're that good, do that. It's a joy to read, but it's not easy.
No.
I mean, I'll take that as an assumed compliment, even though you've got no idea.
It's difficult. Sorry, I don't mean to be discouraging or flippant at all.
No, it's fine.
But I think, particularly if you are relatively earlier in your writing career, it's better not to set yourself up to do really impossible things. Because a lot of, and this is the trick, it's like if you're David Mitchell, you can write Cloud Atlas. Nobody else could write Cloud Atlas and have it work, probably. And there's lots of great stories to be told that don't rely on stylistic things. I'm sorry, I'm getting a bit off the track now. That's
where I went wrong, and what you fixed though is the temptation to be stylist. It's the style over substance thing.
If the style is crucial, yeah.
It's style and substance, isn't it? Or style shouldn't distract from the substance. Which it doesn't in the Cloud Atlas case. The style.
No, it doesn't. It works brilliantly.
Because the rest of the writing is so wonderful.
Yeah. But what you've done isn't easy either. You've got 3 narrative strands that all work together. That's a lot trickier than the number of books that use those devices makes it seem sometimes. And then, my favorite example of this is Milkman. Have you all read Milkman?
Yes.
None of the characters have names. No. And it works. And it's super clear who everybody is.
But you don't realise till quite a long way through, do you? Until it doesn't one person get named at one point? And you're like, whoa!
I don't remember that, maybe.
I think it's quite a long way through. One person...
could be.
Yeah,
and that would have an effect like a bomb going off in your face because... But yeah, it's so brilliantly done that you're not upset by the lack of names, and you're not in any doubt as to who anybody is.
You don't even notice that it's been done because it's so good.
No. I think what we're getting we're doing it again. We're getting way off the question. No, it's my fault this time. What I think when you said about having had to write a couple of novels to learn how to write novels, I think that's crucial. I think we've had several cases of things like that where we used to have open submissions. We don't anymore because we just don't have the capacity, unfortunately. So we've had to move to kind of periods through the year. But we had one guy who sent us, his first novel, and we were like, we loved your writing, but we're not sure about this novel. And then he, sent us a completely rewritten one. It's like, we still love your writing, but we're still not sure about this novel. And then he sent us a different novel, and the writing was even better. And I was like, okay. And there's lots of stories that we hear from agents of like, we're sending out this one, and then the author will sort of say, I have 3 others in a drawer. I would resist the temptation to go backwards.
Yeah.
I think that's, but I think that and not you guys are all writers, but a lot of people think writing a novel is easy, and it's a very unique challenge. And I think you do have to, like with anything, you have to do it once to know how to do it. And you might be able to edit that training novel into something great, and you might not. And it's not a failure if you can't do it. If you have to take the lessons from it and write something else, that's completely legitimate.
The whole thing is a process, isn't it? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
It's a process of learning to write. It's a process of learning to like the fact that you have to sit in your shed for a year writing something, because the vast middle bit is I think I mentioned earlier, is a bit of a slog, and which is why the editing to me is such an exciting bit at the end of it, because you've finished, like, you've done all the hard bit, and then somebody's just going to go, I'm going to make that bit better, and you're like, okay, let's go.
Somebody's going to give you a bunch of very, very demanding notes that you have to fulfill. Well, goes, but
even that's somebody who's spent ages considering what you've written to a minute degree.
Yeah.
Which doesn't happen very often.
Do you know, this is going to sound a bit nuts, but it was when I was doing your first edit, I realized how long your text was. Because when I just read it, it's so pacey and page turning. I just zipped through it. And then, you know, when I was doing the first edit, I had my notebook and I had my paper, and I'm like, I'm 90 pages in. It's taken me 3 days. How much more of this is? Oh God. I mean, and you know, and no, it's mostly intended as a gag, but I think that speaks again to the strength of the narrative, because it didn't feel like a long book when I was reading it, because I was pulled through by the story.
Oh, thanks very much. I've just looked at the time. Tom, we're over, aren't we?
Oh, okay.
We are slightly over, but it's absolutely fine. I will just say it's been an absolute pleasure listening to you guys. You've got such a good rapport that's just between the two of you. So it's obviously you've got a great working relationship. You should get a podcast. I'd listen to it.
All right, I'm up for that.
Yeah, right.
Writer's ramblings. I love it.
That's exactly what it is, though, because it's just nice to hear some other people talk about their personal experiences, and it not all just be about the very practical side, because at the end of the day it's like a very personal experience. So hearing about individual approaches is just always really rewarding. So thank you both so much for all of your time, and to everyone that came along as well, and spending this time at another In Conversation. I never know how to end these things. Thank you everyone for coming to another In Conversation with Writers Studio, and hope to see you all again at another one soon.
And read Kings of a Dead World.
Yes, and go and get Jamie's book.
Post a link on Facebook in a couple of days when the video's up.
Yes, absolutely.
It's being published in June, and you can pre-order now on sandstonepress.com.
There you go.
And pre-ordering is really important.
Of course it is, yes. All right, thanks very much, everyone. And take care.
Thank you.
Take care and stay safe. Bye-bye, everyone.